I will tell you a little bit about what my plan is for tonight, the beginning, middle, and end, and tell you about myself and then jump right in. Look, you folks are filmmakers. You've got to have some writing skills in and amongst that. I have some writing skills. Some of them are transferable, but I'm not here to necessarily write your particular pitch. But what I'm going to do is key on some things that I've noticed in listening to maybe 2,000 pitches in my life. And they're general principles. Genuinely, this is motivational speaking. You're trying to motivate that listener. You're trying to advocate for your position to that audience. And so you are trying to deliver a message. And in so many ways, as I was preparing these materials, I kept thinking to myself, well, here, I'm going to speak to a room full of storytellers. And that's really the fundamental principle here when you're trying to pitch. It's that your story needs to have some particular structure, which we'll get into, some elements that an investor is going to be looking for. But really, you're telling a story about your story in a really small, compact amount of time, and we'll discuss the different audiences you may have and the different speaking setting that you may have with regard to how much time you have. So those principles aside, what I'm hoping to do is not tell you how to make a film, not tell you how to write your story, but hopefully I may remind you of some skills that you already have and have you look at them differently for the audience of an investor as you're pitching, or anyone else who you're trying to get involved with your activity. Maybe there's an actor, maybe there's someone who works on the technical side, maybe there's an editor, who knows who it may be, but you're trying to cajole them to join you. And the best way to get someone to be excited about your project is to describe it, that is, pitch it, in an interesting way that will capture their attention and hopefully inspire their imagination to want to join your project. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an attorney. I've practiced for 25 years in San Francisco. I've been a different kind of attorney over my career. The first 10 years I was a trial lawyer, sort of like on television and in the movies, standing in front of juries. I started, my first trial practice was with the district attorney's office, so again, like movies and TV, putting people in jail, objection, Your Honor, you know, all of those things. Then I went to the civil side, and the arguments weren't about liberty, they were about money, who owes who what, who breached what contract, et cetera, but same concept, where a part of my job, and really the best part of my job, to me, was 12 people in a jury box. I have a story. Very frequently it involves technical or other elements for which this audience is completely unfamiliar. You know, how many neurosurgeons do you get in a box necessarily? How many rocket scientists, et cetera, whatever it may be. How many contract law school class graduates are in that crowd of 12? Not too many. So you have to learn how to deliver a story, and you have to be compelling. You need to teach along the way, because for people to believe in you and to decide in your favor or your client's favor in the case of a trial, they need to trust you. And they need to own the decision making, right? When someone tells you, you need to brush your teeth right now, less likely than when you own that decision, oh geez, I should go up and brush my teeth, I've finished this meal, or what have you. And so those are principles in trying a case and trying to advocate for a position and convince others to agree with you that are transferable to this pitch concept. The pitch that we're talking about here, you want to make a movie, you want to pitch an investor, you want them to invest so that you can realize that dream. In the jury context, it's, I want to get the decision for the benefit of my client from these folks. After 10 years of doing trial lawyer gig, I moved in-house with a public corporation. It was the dot-com era, 99, 2000. I went with a company where I had about 4 of the 6 skill sets required to be a general counsel of a publicly traded corporation. But I got a shot from a CEO. That was a pitch too. That was an interview pitch. Why hire this young guy who doesn't have all 6 skills? He's got 4, he can probably learn the other one, and the other one we're going to send out to somebody else to handle. Went in-house, had a business model in the dot-com era, didn't survive too well. Great business opportunity, nascent market, no revenue, spent lots of money, raised 40 million bucks, spent almost all of it, didn't generate a nickel. And before we flew the plane into the cliff, as we used to say, that is, the whole public company just become a disaster for whom there were many investor shareholders, we changed the business model. We got nimble. And we changed our business model. We had an online trading platform for bandwidth at the time, bandwidth capacity. And instead what we did is we created a broker-dealer and investment bank. It's a boutique. Our clients were small, fast-growing companies. So these companies are much like you filmmakers. You have an idea, you're trying to get money. In their instance, they want to get their stock traded. Maybe they want an investment from our firm. Maybe they want our investment bankers to go out and raise millions of capital for their idea. And so as a result of doing that job for a decade, I saw a lot of pitches, 2 a day for almost 10 years. I played a role from the attorney aspect in raising capital for clients. I didn't go out and solicit capital. I worked back home with our bankers, worked with our issuer client, the company, worked with the investors to just smooth out that whole 3-way relationship between these folks to get a transaction done. I behaved much like a fireman. Another aspect was that before we would bring a client in and provide them services, we had to be sure it was a marketable company. So a marketable company means we need to be confident when we were trading their stock or raising money from our investor client base that this was a company that had had proper due diligence completed, its financials were in order, its governance was in order, its documents were in order, management team, business plan, marketing, you name it. It had to have everything in order. Now, very few businesses came in and had everything just right in order. These are young companies again. These were not mature companies. These were younger companies. So there were tweaks and there was advice to be given for their attorneys to correct things and get things ready so we could present this company out into the public to raise capital, trade their stock, invest in it ourselves, write research about them, whatever the activity may have been. We wanted to be confident in the quality of that company that we were going to go out and act as an agent for. And so in that process, I learned how to correct things that don't quite fit. I heard them all pitch. Poor pitches often didn't get our attention. Could lose it in a pitch because there was another company pitching right behind you. And then a couple more the next day, and so on and so forth. You'll find that same kind of element that as you're running out to seek those dollars, there are many others seeking the same dollars to produce a movie. You could even limit it to that niche. There are many others. So what I'm hoping to do tonight is to give you some principles that you can apply as you're creating a pitch to gain confidence. And so you can be that confident speaker. You can advocate for your idea and convince folks to participate. One of the other things that I've done with regard to public speaking and getting in front of folks and presenting ideas was that I taught at law school. That's quite a challenge. Got 100 very intelligent young men and women who you're trying to teach something to. They're quick learners, but they also have remarkably quick intellect, so there's lots of questions. If there's something in between the cracks, they usually find it right away and challenge you. And that's a much more interactive type of relationship than a jury trial. That's pretty much one way you interact with witnesses, but the jury, you really only tell them a story at the beginning and then you tell them a story at the end. And then I do some stage acting as well with a club that I belong to, so I occasionally get up and sing, and not much dancing.
Club,
Excuse me?
Bohemian Club?
It's very similar to that. It's an offshoot from 1902. Anyhow, that's my background. Let's jump in and see if we can begin thinking about the philosophy of our pitch. And I would suggest that each of you, after this program, and when you sit down to work on your pitch for your idea, that you review these materials and answer these questions for your specific project. So what are you trying to accomplish? Question number one. Seems obvious. I'm trying to raise money. Okay, that's an endpoint. But really what you're trying to do is you're trying to engage this decision maker. You're trying to make contact with this person, develop trust. Believe it or not, just in this presentation, in a small amount of time, trust needs to be built because, oh, goodness, we all understand this. Before we part with our dollars, we certainly want a trust factor involved in it. It's not as direct as if we meet tonight and we have lunch and we get to know each other and talk on the phone, we correspond with each other. You're building a relationship. Through that relationship, you have opportunities to build trust, showing up at your appointment on time, bringing the materials you said you would do what you say you were going to do, things of that nature. That tends to help us build a trusting relationship with a friend or acquaintance. Well, in these pitches, you're trying to build a trusting relationship. I think there is a great amount of success in building trust if you are confident and expert in what you're speaking about. In this context of pitching a movie, you must know that story better than anyone on earth. You've lived with it. You've lived it personally. You've seen it. You've written it and rewritten it, written it some more, edited it, presented it, redone it. All the iterations, you know it better than anyone. And you need to project that to this audience. You know what you're talking about. You know what you're trying to accomplish. What you're trying to accomplish is tell your story in a mini story that includes all of the writing elements that you put into your movie ideas. What's the beginning, what's the middle, what's the end? We're going to talk about it more in the breakdown. But what are you trying to accomplish? Convincing folks to believe in you and invest the dollars into your project so you can see it through. What's the differentiator about your story? This one's a tricky one, right? We certainly know in a film context there are genre, dramas, comedies, mysteries, action. I don't know. There's many others, I'm sure. But what's the differentiator in your story? Why will your story be interesting?